Through music, we have the ability to touch other people's heart and even change their lives through music. And this, for real, is not just hippie thought. It's physical because it is vibration. There is no barrier for language, for anything. It's through emotion. So emotion is what connects everything. Intuition and emotion. And music has its all.
Hello, welcome to the Acoustic Guitar Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle, joined for this episode by co-host Elton Bradman. Brazilian nylon string guitarist and singer Badi Assad has been earning accolades since her debut album was released in 1989. Today, she's using her technical mastery to explore and experiment with the guitar's full sonic range. We were lucky enough to sit down with her for a wide-ranging conversation on composing and arranging, guitar grooves, how to sing and play at the same time, and the importance of experimentation. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is a listener-supported show. If you're already supporting us on Patreon, thank you. You'll find part 2 of this episode waiting for you there. To join our Patreon community, visit patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. Check the show notes for that link, plus additional links to resources related to this episode. One more quick note before we get started. It was a hot day in Brazil when we recorded, so you will hear a bit of birdsong and traffic noise coming in through Badi's open window. Our discussion begins with Badi Assad reflecting on her latest album, Ilha, and how her choice to simplify some of her more advanced guitar techniques took her to a new level.
I also had, because my brother, for example, Sérgio Assad, he has always been doing arrangements for my guitar. And when he does those arrangements, you don't even need to sing, even if he's doing to accompany my voice, because it's so much full of voices, always has a bass line going on, some melody on the top of the harmony, making a journey here and there. And I think my whole path during all these years was to develop a technique that allows me to do all these complicated arrangements on the guitar and being singing at the same time. So it's not just some chords and I am singing. It's really, I learned from scores how to play those arrangements. And this one now, Sergio was not part of the arrangements session, was Márcio Arantes, which brought other visions for the guitar approach, which was very interesting. More like this. I probably would never come up with something right like this. It's a line, and then we develop the song from there. But I mean, Serge would probably not come with a groove in the bass line. He would do all these other things going on, you know. But when we shrank that down, create another dynamic that I never explored before. And that on the stage, playing this line with the bass player and the drummer going on, it's so like, I love it. And I'm doing that song for like live by myself, and it works still. Still complicated to play and sing, but well, I've done this for so many years. It's kind of natural for me now.
Beautiful. You know, so many people that we talk about they have different techniques for learning how to sing and play at the same time. Some people find it very natural. Some people will learn the vocal line and then learn the guitar part and put them together. What's your favorite way after all these years?
I learned separated because, as I said, the guitar sometimes it speaks by itself that I have to have the total domain. Then I don't have to think about it anymore. It just goes. And I incorporate the voice. And then the dynamic and the flow between the two happens connected to the heart. So the heart becomes the centerpiece of combining these two, the emotion. That's every song has its own emotion. And as an interpreter, I I really love to dive into separated songs. These songs is about it's a protest. So this is a protest. These songs are love songs. So this is a love song. And the emotions I put in one of those are totally different. I go with the mood, you know. Do silêncio veio o som, dentro dele toda a música. Do silêncio veio a mente, dentro dela toda a forma. There are two things going on here: the melody in top, the bass line, and sing. If I don't have this automatically going, my voice is going to to break and I'll be out of focus, and so that is how I operate. And it's out of tune. It's too. I don't imagine how hot is here, and in Brazil, not all the houses have air conditioning. We have, but in the living room, but I cannot be there, so. My preference for many years now is to, I kind of got away from the instrumental music, just performing instrumental music. Of course, here and there have some solo in the middle of the composition, but I had Focal dystonia in the end of last century, which put in my head in another direction. First, to survive as a human being, as an artist, I said, okay, my music is not in my guitar. It took me 2 years to recuperate, but it took me away from the instrumental music. And also, I didn't recuperate 100% of my chops as I had before to play all those very complicated instrumental pieces. I was able to. But my head migrated to another direction and my focus went to sing and using the guitar simultaneously. And I still do a lot of complicated stuff on the guitar, but the focus shifted. So when my voice is not there nowadays, it's like, I can even say that it became a little scar, you know. If the voice is not there, I feel kind of naked. And it's kind of the opposite before. If the guitar was not there, I was feeling myself naked. And it shifted after the dystonia. And eventually I'm invited to do some participation in concerts here in Brazil that I don't even play the guitar. Which before I would never even like, what? Me? Just a singer? No. But now when you ask me what do you do, I say I'm a singer and guitar player, you know.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of like expanding, you know, what you do musically, just speaking about the guitar, I mean, you've always kind of done more than strumming and plucking. You've expanded what the guitar can do. What got you started doing that, and what drives you to keep exploring the instrument in ways that you do?
So many phases. Well, so there was at the beginning, my first albums were coming out from Badi that really was playing the guitar to participate in competitions, classical competitions, guitar competitions, representing Brazil in international competitions. So the chops were there. And I started singing because in 89 I recorded my first album, which was a vinyl still. And many musicians came to perform with me. Like Sergio was the producer, so he invited a flute, a flautist, a drummer, this and that. But those people came to the release of the album, which was from a private company. And then I was a solo musician. So I started imitating the sounds of the instruments with my voice. So I could do that album. That is how it started. My mind started to split. Oh, I have something else here. So in one of the songs, there was a flute, and then there was a percussion at the same time. And I was like, can I do this? So I discovered that I could, like, that kind of thing. And I started to take that to another level. And I was crazy, like with my voice and the guitar. And there was another phase which I had the journey. I really could use props to change the sound of the guitar, and or to combine the guitar with other instruments just by myself. When I played a shaker, and of course I started being able to, I practiced so I could sing while these two things are going on. So I start operated, like my head started to operate as a percussionist. I went to have percussion lessons before I started to do this, and I said, Jesus, we can do more than if the drummer can play a member this, a member that, and do polyrhythm, I can do that. So I started doing using the wood of the guitar as a percussion. When I started having those ideas, then I went through some years exploring. What is next? What is next? But then I signed a deal with IE Music, which was a Verve's, belonged to the Polygram by the time. And it was part of the contract that I should compose 9 songs. So I shifted. My attention was to compose. It was not a thing before. Then I really discovered, Jesus, I can compose songs. And I was good doing that too. And then the shift was not so much in experimental music, was migrated to songs. Yeah, so I kept in my repertoire, of course, I've released 20 albums. So if you times that 12 songs, so it's going to be 200 music. I cannot keep 200 music in the tip of my fingers. So some songs I lost them already. But some I kept. Those that I know it's interesting, keeps interesting through the time, I keep them under my, if I don't practice this, I'm going to lose this. You have to keep practicing some, like how to play this to be able to perform right. I don't play that specific song with the shaker for maybe 2-3 months, but I can pick it up and play because I've done a lot of time. So what I want to say is that the songs that make sense to keep in my present time are the ones that are still fresh, even if they are old. But nowadays, my production, I'm not so much into this experimentation. Now I'm experimenting with a sampler, and I did sign with Roland here in Brazil, and I'm going to receive it's a little late in the process, but I'm going to receive me sponsoring the loop station, which I never used, but now I'm interested in where can I take that, because until now I didn't want to use loop station because I do so much sound simultaneously. I thought that it would take away my ability to do all these sounds all together. Like when I do something cute I do, and I start doing this only in concerts, like I present my band. So in the right hand, ladies and gentlemen, in the right hand, the guitar player, and the guitar player is doing some harmonics, And I say, now comes the bass player. Then the drummer. The singer. And this became like my little
I have to point this out because nobody could see you. This is just audio. You were doing all of that, just layering it yourself. There were no pedals. You were singing and doing the percussion, and of like, it's hard to imagine if I hadn't seen you doing that you had just done that. Honestly,
that is fun. I'm never going to stop doing that on my concerts, even this little bit. If it, like the concert now in Brazil for Ilha, this song is not there, but I do in a little bit in the encore, just because people like to see and have fun with me.
Great, it's great. Even as you were describing your journey, I thought, wow, how amazing that Badi is doing all that without technology, and that gives it's an expression of your heart. You've had such an amazing journey following your heart. I think that is a rare thing, that you are just listening to your instinct, and that's what has guided your journey. How could you advise, what kind of advice would you have for someone who feels that that's very difficult?
Jesus, there is no other way than following the heart. Because for my own experience, when I start doing some of my stuff, Badi music, and I was going to perform for some American Guitar Society, which like every major city in America has its own guitar society. I remember the first time I played for GFA, Guitar Foundation of America. I was still in my 20s, and I played my crazy stuff, and some people left, stood up and left. And I remember right there, I was a 400 seat, sold out, and like 10 people left after the third song. And I remember right there, I thought, but gee, wait, are you going to perform for those 10 that left, or for these 300 some that stayed? So when we do some things, especially if it is original in some level, and in a way, anything we do, it's impossible to please everybody. It's just a dream. So we have to be very clear that in our mind, so we don't take the risk of cutting ourselves away from any kind of dream just because somebody said we are not good or we're not good enough. When we trust ourselves and when we do this with confidence, maybe you are not going to perform for 1,000 people, but the 100 that stay are going to be in synchronicity with what you are doing. And so keep your windows open for what is out there, and be open if you like. And nowadays, you mentioned that nowadays it's so much in numbers. How many followers you have, how many views did you got, how many interaction. And it's very easy for us to get lost in ourselves. Following those, it's a big trap. So even for me, sometimes I I fall in the trap, and I am like a 56 years old lady with more than 30 years of career. I still fall in the trap, but I I noticed that I felt right away. I say, oh, stand up. It's not about this. So you have to be very trusting your instincts, not being afraid of the others going to say about you, and not being offended if somebody doesn't like what you do, and follow the heart. Because if we follow the heart, we are going to be content. And if we are content with what we are doing, somebody else is going to feel the love you put into it and your truth. And it has a space for everybody, even if it's not such a big space.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit here. Let's talk about your guitars. Do you have different guitars for home, road, studio? What are you playing now? Let's start with that. Yeah.
This one is with me since I was 14 years old. It was my brother's guitar, and I didn't have a guitar when I started playing. So Odair and Sergio, they let me use this, and he's still with me. I said, now it's mine, right? So this is a Paul Fisher, which is made in England. And like last year, Paul Fisher received a tribute. And I was the one musician that still plays his, not that still plays, a lot of musicians play, but I mean, for this, I'm playing this guitar for like 40 years, you know. Every studio, every recording studio you heard me playing was with this guitar, except around the world, and I can explain why. Okay, so this guitar doesn't leave the house unless it's going to a studio. But why that, Badi? Well, since we know, I even did this sacrilege, how do you say sacrilégio? To put a system there to amplify it, because for a while I traveled with this. But it's when I start playing with a drummer and other instruments, to play with a guitar that you cannot turn on the volume to keep up with a drum, it's a hassle. So right that time I start, this is about, it's the 90s still. I was invited by Takamine to be one of their sponsor. No, they were my sponsor, so I was one of their
endorsers.
And it has a very cute story, because when they approached me, they wanna me being part of an ad they were doing. They were doing this campaign that the guitar player was going to hold the guitar and doing some kind of hobby. And I just had jumped with a hang glider in Rio de Janeiro, and I said, hang glider. So there is this ad that I'm holding a guitar, Takamine flying in this hang glider. It's a pretty fun ad. Anyway, so I played Takamine for many years. They gave me the Hirad, which is the top Takamine brand model. But then when my daughter, I was pregnant, and this in 2006, in 2007 she was born. In 2006, her father, which is Dimitri, my ex, he gave me a gift, which was a framework from Germany. Is at top level. Oh, it's gorgeous. And he gave me when I was going to do a tour pregnant. I was 5 months, and he was not going to go with me. It was a tour done by female guitar players in America. And there was a bunch of the production, there was a producer of the group going to travel with us. So we decided that financially, if I would go by myself, everybody was going to take care of me and he didn't need to go. Okay, so he gave me this guitar because it's very light and it was going to be easier for me to travel. And I loved it because frameworks, Jesus, these guitars, they sound good. One thing I learned, when the public sees you holding a Takamine, it's still an acoustic guitar. So you expect an acoustic sound. So really have to have a good sound equipment, a good sound engineer to help you producing an acoustic sound with this electronic. And with the frame, what you're looking is a frame guitar, so you don't expect an acoustic sound. So it is like, it's easier to come up with a good sound because nobody's making a comparison. And I still play that guitar. I still do it. I still travel, especially nowadays. To travel is such a hassle. So I can take my guitar inside the airplane. Nobody even knows it's a guitar. You don't have like, I have to go inside the airplane first to find a place for my guitar. Now some hand overheads doesn't even fit a guitar. You have to have a great guitar case, and it's always like something to think. Anyway, that is my guitar. And which are the guitars I have? The Pimentel family gave me one of their guitars, which I used in the cover of an album of mine called Hatched. That was a very interesting sections of pictures, photography. Well, those are my main 4 guitars. Yeah. I'm not a collector. Each one has its own specifics and needs. I'm not like, I know some guitar players that have so many guitars in the house. Like, yeah, I have my 4.
There are so few guitar players who don't, I guess when you fall in love with guitar, then occasionally, you'll see a guitar walking by and you think, I need that. It's just so often it happens. And
yes.
So many players, they hear something and they think, oh, I need this. So I think it's very, it's great discipline, or it's a certain special thing that you have that it's only 4 guitars. You know what I mean?
Well, actually, I lied to you. I have 5. No, I have one steel string. And acoustic guitar, I've been a supporter of you guys since you have been a supporter of me since I started. So thank you for the invitation. So for all of you, Badi Assad, how do you spell that? Badiassad. I call the name of my publishing company Badi Assad. But it's not spelled like that. And my Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, it's all Badiassad. So I will wait for you there. I always put a lot of content and always thinking how to embrace the world.
That's the end of part 1. The conversation continues over at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus. In part 2, Badi explains and demonstrates her approach to reinterpreting pop songs on guitar. Thanks for listening. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is brought to you by the team at Acoustic Guitar Magazine. I'm your host, Nick Grizzle, joined for this episode by Elton Bradman. The Acoustic Guitar Podcast is directed and edited by Joey Lusterman. Tanya Gonzalez is our producer. Executive producers are Lizzie Lusterman and Stephanie Campos-Dalbroy. If you enjoy this podcast and want to support us, please visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/acousticguitarplus or find the link in our show notes for this episode. As a supporter, you'll have access to exclusive bonus episodes along with other special perks. And if you're already a patron, thank you so much for your support.